Perfect. Welcome everyone to this Audits and Standards Committee meeting for Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council. It's a public meeting, so it will be recorded. Communications have been tested in the room as well. The recording will be available on the Borough Council's website. Can we just remind members to use their desktop microphone when they're invited to speak by myself, and the standards of behaviour of the meeting apply and set out at the Council standard orders. So mobile phones, please be switched off or set to silent, and there's no planned fire drills for this meeting. The fire exits are clearly marked in the event of an alarm activating. Please follow the directions by staff as well. Okay. Let's move on to the first item then. So the agenda is apologies. Have we got any others? We've got an apologies from Councillor Simon Tagg, and he's been substituted by Councillor Mark Holland as well. So there's no more, is there? Perfect. So item 2 is declarations of interest. Do you have any declarations of interest today?
Yeah.
Excellent. Item 3 on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. Are we happy to approve those as a true record of the meeting? Thank you, Jane. Item 4 then of the agenda is the proposed accounting policies and sources of estimation and uncertainty for 2025 and 2026, which will be presented by the Deputy Section 151 Officer Stephen Heppel. Perfect.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek the committee's approval for the accounting policies, accounting estimates and assumptions that will underpin the Council's 25-26 Statement of Accounts. This is recognised as good practice and good governance and supports the Council's compliance with the accounts and audit regulations, the CIPFA Code of Practice and International Financial Reporting Standards. The report confirms that the accounting policies have been reviewed against the 25-26 CIPFA Code and no fundamental changes are proposed from the previous year. The policies remain appropriate for the Council's activities and financial reporting requirements. Members are also asked to approve the key assumptions and sources of estimation uncertainty that are reflected in the Statement of Accounts. These relate primarily to pension liabilities, where actuarial assumptions can significantly affect valuations, and property valuations, where changes in market values or useful lives can impact the balance sheet. These are standard accounting estimates required of all local authorities and do not affect the Council's underlying financial position or the level of council tax. The report also confirms that there are no critical accounting judgments requiring disclosure for 25-26. Members are therefore recommended to approve the proposed accounting policies and the assumptions underpinning the accounting estimates. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Perfect. Councillor Mark Holland.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the report. Just as a technical matter, can I check the report refers to Appendix D? There is an Appendix C at the end of the report, but no Appendix D. Can I just check that all references in the report to Appendix D should say Appendix C, in which case I have read all of it and understood it. Thank you very much.
I think that's correct, yes.
So, are we okay to move on to this? Are we happy to? I'll run through the recommendations. So, we're happy to approve the proposed accounting policies that will form part of the 2025 and 26 Statement of Accounts. Number 2, approve the Council's assumptions made about the future and other major sources of estimation and uncertainty that will form part of the 2025 and 26 Statement of Accounts. And then number 3, delegate to the Service Director for Finance, the Section 151 Officer, the ability to make further changes to the proposed.
Can I just confirm with regards to Councillor Holland's assumptions that that is correct? It should say Appendix C. So we'll get that changed. Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
Just before we approve it, can I just make the comment that, as usual, a very hefty accounting statement that nobody likes to read is made very readable by the people involved. So thank you.
Perfect. So we're happy to approve recommendations. Perfect. So we'll move on to item 5 of the agenda. It's the draft statement of accounts for the 25 and 26, which will be presented by the Section 151 officer, Craig Turner.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to present the Council's draft statement of accounts for 25-26 and seek the committee's approval for publication and submission to the external auditor. Under the Accounts and Audit Regulations, the Council is required to prepare and publish its draft accounts by the 30th of June 2026. Following publication, the accounts will be subject to external audits during the summer, with the audited statement of accounts due to return to this committee for approval in November, ahead of the statutory publication deadline. Some key points from the accounts and the covering report. So, overall, the Council has delivered a favourable revenue outturn of £115,000 against the approved budget. This surplus has been transferred into the Budget Support Fund to strengthen the Council's financial resilience. The report highlights a number of positive budget variances, including higher planning income, increased investment interest, and lower borrowing costs. These have been partially offset by reduced income from J2 during the pool closure, lower car parking and bereavement services income, and a lower recovery of housing benefits overpayments. The statement summarises the Council's overall financial position at the 31st of March 2026, including the balance sheet, reserves, capital programme and collection fund. Usable reserves remain at a healthy level. The general fund balance remains untouched at 2.007 million, and the capital programme has largely been funded through external grants. Members are therefore recommended to note the provisional financial outturn for 25-26 and approve the draft statement of accounts for publication and audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Perfect. Does anyone have any questions for Craig? Councillor Foy.
Thank you very much, Chair. And can I thank the officers for this tremendous piece of work and showing that the council is in good financial health. And can I congratulate those who were responsible for the stewardship of that. There are a few points I'd like to make. Firstly, that most of them are small corrections to wording, and I don't know if it's worth. I've got a number of them, but maybe we could do that offline. But one of them, the accounts page 7, I think, which was page 45 of the report. I'm afraid I don't have my report in front of me. Yeah.
Page 7 is the table?
No, it's page 7 of the actual accounts. So it's page 45. Yeah.
And then
That's page 5, that's page 6, that's page 7.
So at one point we talked about a connection, whereas I think it should be to create, here it is in the second bullet point near the bottom, it says to create a connection accessible town centre. I would imagine that's supposed to be a connected, accessible town centre. And that was the main thing that I thought people wouldn't understand if they saw that. There are a number of other points which I could go through offline that are not particularly significant, but would just help it to read a bit better. The other, on page 89, I don't know which page of the financial report it is.
Oh, right.
Page 89 of the
document.
The document, yeah. I wondered if it could be made a little bit clearer what sources of income we're referring to. Because going through the accounts, you don't want, as far as I can see a reference to income from council tax. So it talks about sources of finance income. I would imagine that includes council tax or not?
Yes.
It does. So if it could say sources of finance income in brackets, including council tax and business rates or something like that, then it relates the document to what people actually pay, either through their businesses or through their properties. All the other points are minor typographical things, which I can do offline. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wilden.
I'm here with a comment again instead of a question. I'm not a questioning girl today. I'm just looking at every single one of the tables and the actual looking at the reserve funds and anything that's got a pound sign in front of it. I think it's worth noting how incredibly astute we've been as a conglomerate of council members to actually get us to the point where everything is looking so sound and financially up to this point where you've done this quarter. So we can all pat ourselves on the back for having done an incredible job, because it looks so, we look so financially sound. In fact, I've said this once before, Newcastle Borough Council could actually hold themselves up as a template for others to follow. And let's hope this continues for the next quarter ad infinitum. And I think everyone's to be congratulated, not just the officers who do a massively brilliant job, but every single member of the council who were responsible for these figures at the time have done a sterling job in dotting every I and crossing every T. And I think people moan so much about things. It's refreshing to be able to actually congratulate people on doing a brilliant job. Thank you.
Councillor Saxon.
Yes, I do have a specific query towards one of the projects we have. Forgive me if I've missed it, because there was a lot of information to take in for the first meeting agenda. It applies specifically to the car park project. Now, under my understanding, if all the units aren't sold within the car park, then the council has got to buy the building back from Capital and Centric. If that's right, do we have the money in the reserves to do such? Because I've not actually seen it. I don't know if I've missed it, but I can't see it myself.
Yeah, so the accounts don't show that. You're correct in that. If C&C don't achieve the levels of stabilisation, so the occupancy levels that prompts them to buy, then yeah, the council would have to run the project. It would involve the council borrowing the funds at that point. So in 18 months' time, when the project's finished, the C&C then have a further 2 years to achieve those stabilisation levels, and if they don't, we will borrow at that point. We've done some initial modelling around how much it would cost us to run, and certainly during the first 5 years of its operation, it would be really, really affordable. So works undertaken separately to the statement of accounts in terms of that, and that's probably something we'll pick up during the budget setting process a bit more.
Just the point I was getting across was, obviously, and I think you've answered it, is that we will be borrowing to buy, and it is a substantial amount of money. Was the full risk assessment done on this in that depth? Because to me, that is a lot of money.
Yeah, all options were considered. The ideal situation and the one we've been working to is the C&C purchase. But if that doesn't happen, then we do have backup plans.
I'm just sorry. You can't see who I am.
Councillor Sainsbury.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just following up from my friend here who raised the issue on the car park. You mentioned 5-year plan. Is in here? Is there something that I could have missed? I'm trying to scroll on my phone. I'm reading 206 pages on that phone. Is there a further plan put in place? The 5-year plan, 10-year plan? Yes. Is it in there? If I could be directed to it, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, so as soon as we start the budget setting process, the MTFS, which reviews our finances over the medium term, which is a 5-year period, is then produced. So the MTFS has all of the implications of borrowing in there. That would then, if it did become the case that C&C weren't going to be purchasing, then those figures would be fed into the MTFS, and the council would either be able to afford in its current budget, or it would have to look into options about services that it could improve or income generation areas to cover some of those costs.
Just to be clear, we are talking about the same car park where you park on level 5.
No, we're not. We're talking about the old Midway car park that's been turned into apartments.
By VU.
So yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I think just to be clear on that, the absolute intention is that C&C purchase. We've had absolutely no indication that C&C won't purchase. Quite the contrary, to the contrary of that. So C&C have got a project in Stoke just next to the train station.
Yes,
they're pretty much at 95% occupancy in that place that I would like to think living in Newcastle might be a bit better than living next to a train station. Yeah, they're doing loads and loads of work throughout the country, really, really successfully. So yeah, have lots of assurance, and we do have lots and lots of governance and assurance points with C&C.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Saxon.
Just to reflect on that, I think whilst I would agree with you, I would prefer to live in Newcastle rather than Stoke. I don't think we can quite align both projects the same. I think both projects are completely unique. One's pretty much a new build, one's repurposing an old car park, and location of the one in Stoke, it's literally neighbouring a college, a university and a train station. So all them 3 points to me would make more desirable to people rather than an old car park in Newcastle.
Okay, so just to reassure you a bit more, loads of options appraisals have been done. There was a full analysis ahead of the approval for the projects. We've been really successful in terms of attracting external funding to it. So we've had pretty much 20 million from Homes England. We've had further amounts from the Future High Streets Fund and Pound Deals funds. So although the headlines might be for the 3 projects that we've got ongoing, that it's a cost of 90 million. Once you take those grants into account, it's a lot less than that. So yeah, we have had lots and lots of assurance, and we'll continue to give you that as members as well.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Saxon raises important issues in relation to risk management, and I hope we'll have an opportunity to come back to risk, particularly associated with the delivery of town deal projects later on in this agenda under item 9, but also through the work programme that we as a committee agree. I'm only a substitute here, so I may not follow through on that, but it would be absolutely within this committee's sphere of responsibility to look at the mitigation and the management of such risks. I do think we should approve tonight the draft statement of accounts. Like other members, I'm extremely glad to see the positive variance in the outturn. I think it shows all the work that's gone into running and managing this council's finances over the past 12 months. Chair, I was wondering if, given what Councillor Lefroy mentioned earlier, if it would be amenable to officers to make minor non-material amendments to that report before it is published in the very near future. If members are happy to, we could amend item 2 to say that we're approving it for publication, subject to a conversation occurring between you, Chair, the member who's raised technical minor amendments, and the Section 151 officer. And if that is amenable, I'd be very happy to move the recommendations that have been printed for us.
I'm happy to do that. Our deadline for publishing is tomorrow. I have the authority outside of this committee to publish the accounts, and regardless of what you guys had just approved. But yeah, if you could forward me your points, Councillor Lefroy, pretty promptly, then we could get those incorporated. Otherwise,
Before the Brazil match is finished.
Otherwise they'll be as they are.
There are many of them, but there's only 2 or 3 which I think are worth staying up till 2 in the morning to do. So I will give you those. The rest maybe for next time.
Go ahead, Councillor Holland.
Just to thank our officer for his willingness to be flexible, particularly given the tight deadline and the fact that he already has the power, should he wish to publish that. But it is important when we're sending things out to external audit and when we're publishing things for the general public to view, that what we're sending out there is in as tip-top condition as we can make, and indeed in as top condition as this council's finances are.
Go ahead, Councillor Wildham.
Okay. To put Councillor Saxton and Councillor Sainsbury's minds at rest. I'm actually originally a Stokey girl, so I had great interest in what was going on round about the station. Things I agreed with and things I didn't agree with, but I was just monitoring Capital Centric because of our involvement with them. There were quite a few naysayers in Stoke-on-Trent as to whether it was going to be a success or not. They're now virtually maximum filled. They're very posh. And to be honest, to get that sort of return and interest when something's stuck by a station and the noise, stuck by a sort of the equivalent of a dual carriageway, because we have our own little mini spaghetti junction there with Glebe Street and everything else concerned. And whilst it's an asset to have students around in a university, they are come day, go day Johnnies and don't stay for the whole time. What they were looking at was something more long term and not a student hostel type situation. And they've got significant amounts of very professional people who are renting there. As far as the actual involvement of Capital Centric for us is concerned, which I know probably are dear to your heart, and you've raised the issue, both of you, quite appropriately. As I recall, and there's been lots of football matches since when I sort of remember it, but as I recall, quite a good risk assessment was done on this, and also a cost-benefit analysis. And at the time, and I can be a bit of a witch as far as numbers are concerned, because I qualified as a risk manager decades ago when God was a little boy. So I'm quite hot on that sort of thing. And I was thoroughly pleased with it and impressed by it and happy with it, because when you're building things in the centre of a market town like ours that has got a good and long history, you have to be absolutely spot on. Otherwise, not only going to affect the locals and their goodwill, but also people who come to the town. And I was thoroughly appreciated. Just again, referring back to the Stoke one, whilst you say it was virtually a new build, those were old train buildings to begin with, and part what Capital Centric succeed in doing, which is why they were selected, is that they are refurbers of old and decrepit buildings rather than demolishers and new build. New build is anathema to me anyway, which is why I'm upset with some of the things that went on in Stoke historically over the last 20, 30 years. And capital centric are making such a name for themselves, not just locally, but universally, as being people who can do this sort of thing. And it's sometimes people say, "Oh, demolish it and let's have a new build." It can cost as much to demolish as the actual cost of a new build. So to find someone who utilises that which we've already got to great effect is an absolute godsend as far as I'm concerned. It retains and protects the heritage for future generations, that at least the facades look like old Newcastle, and that's what attracts people to Newcastle. I mean, I could happily live in a town centre apartment where the facade was so beautiful and historical, and I'll probably end up moving it to one anyway, because I'm not so good on my pins anymore. It's to be able to walk to the market, to be able to walk to the butchers, to be able to walk, I was going to say Chapman's, but they're not there anymore, to be able to walk to the pharmacy and so on would be an absolute godsend. And I think we'll be fending off people rather than looking for people to move in, if that puts your mind at rest a bit.
It's certainly important.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that, I mean, obviously yourself, you probably were privy to more, as I've only just been elected as a councillor, you've probably seen more of the risk assessment than I have. It does still play in my mind that it's a brand new development, as in the fact of it's a car park being turned into housing. I don't think we've ever seen that anywhere else in the country. I think it is the first. So there is still a relative unknown with the project. And it just, the risk assessment itself, like I say, you've probably had more clarity on it than I have.
Yeah.
But I still think there is a lot of risk, and it's...
If I can just say, I understand your apprehension. I understand the fact that, you're coming to everything so fresh and you don't have the history. If you go back on the calendar, when you pull up meetings and so on, you go back on the calendar, which you can do, you can pull up the videos and see what was discussed, and that might help to clarify things historically for you, to put your mind at rest. I'm not saying it's not appropriate for you to raise them. It's absolutely appropriate, and it's good that you do. And a fresh set of eyes is always very good. But I think the fresh set of eyes has to take in the knowledge, the historic knowledge as well, to have a comprehensive understanding of it. And I think that's a wise thing to do. So you could do that. As far as the risk is concerned, if you are risk averse, you just die on the spot. So there has to be some risk appetite. Otherwise, you will never progress, you will never grow, nothing will ever sort of evolve. And although we're 853 years old, we want to grow, we want to progress, but doing it steadily whilst having attention to all the history that's attached to Newcastle-under-Lyme. And I'm sure you will appreciate that as much as anyone else. The risk of, and I'll look it up and I'll let you have it, but I do know that there's somewhere else where they've taken a car park and turned it into other things. I don't know whether it was apartments, but other things. So there is some track record. I will look it up and find it for you if you're interested.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Cool. I would say, trust me, I'm a lawyer, but don't, because I'm retired.
No, I absolutely agree with you when you say, if we're risk averse and we don't take any risks.
Exactly.
It seems to me like 95% was a high number to risk on something that we've got no blueprint for.
To be honest, I think it would put your mind at rest, and I think you're right to be concerned, but it would put your mind at rest if you looked over the back minutes of the meetings and the back videos to sort of check on things, and you will see the progression through, because before you, there was the lady who, what was it? Can't remember. Sarah, who I call Mrs. Sums, who was brilliant. And you are equally brilliant. What a team we've got. They actually were quite specific and honed in on this. And they made sure that we were doing what we needed to do, and we made sure that they were doing what they needed to do. So historically, there is an excellent track record. And if you look back over those, and it'll be like doing a box set for you. So you'll probably need chocolate and beers or something like that to actually go through it. But it would put your mind at rest, I'm quite sure.
Yeah, like I say, I will look back through them. I just thought it was a point to raise. Not just because of the risk factor, but the cost factor that will come into it if we do have to buy it. Because as Craig has said, I don't think we've got the money just sitting there to buy it if we have to.
But as I say, that's been taken into account in the risk assessment and the cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. I know, I'm stopping people involved.
With approving the accounts, so we're happy to, number one, note the general fund outrun and the key issues in respect to the council's financial position at the 31st of March 2026. And then the second one, that's with the wording change, isn't it? Yeah. So we approve the draft statement of the accounts of 25-26 for publication and audit with a few wording corrections as well. Okay.
Good.
Fantastic. We'll roll on to item 6 of the agenda. This is the annual governance statement for 25-26, which will be presented by Section 151 Officer Craig Turner. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chair. The report asks the committee to approve the annual governance statement for 25-26 for inclusion with the council's statement of accounts. The annual governance statement is a statutory requirement under the Accounts and Audit Regulations and provides assurance that the council has appropriate governance, risk management and internal control arrangements in place. The statement has been prepared using evidence from service directors and managers' assurance statements, the work of internal audits, external audits finding and corporate governance groups. It's based on CITFR's Delivering Good Governance framework and demonstrates how the council meets the 7 recognised principles of good governance, including integrity, transparency, effective decision-making, risk management, financial stewardship and accountability. The annual review concludes that the council's governance framework and system of internal control remains effective and provides reasonable assurance that significant risks are identified and managed appropriately. Internal audit has provided a substantial level of assurance over the adequacy of internal controls, and the previous year's external audit identified no significant governance concerns. Importantly, no significant governance or internal control weaknesses were identified during 25-26, although the council remains committed to continuous improvement. Members are therefore asked to approve the annual governance statement, confirming they are satisfied that it's supported by appropriate and reliable evidence before it's published alongside the council's financial statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Do we have any questions? Councillor Wilden.
Just a comment that if you go to point 12, this isn't a key decision. It's for informational purposes only.
Perfect. So is the committee happy to approve the annual governance statement for 25-26? Fantastic. On to item 7 of the agenda, is the internal audit outrun report for 25-26, which will be presented by the Senior Audit Manager, Alex Cannon. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report presents the annual internal audit opinion for 25-26 and summarises the work completed as part of the approved internal audit plan, as well as confirming compliance with the global internal audit standards. The report details the outcome of our work during the year, which has been broken up into 3 sections that contribute to that annual opinion. The first, at section 2.5, shows the results of the key financial systems audits. All of these audits received a positive assurance opinion apart from payroll. Section 2.6 shows the 3 high priority recommendations that led to this limited opinion, all of which relate to system access, which is controlled by the payroll provider. Management are liaising with the provider to address these control weaknesses. Section 2.8 shows the results of all other audit engagements. I'd just like to highlight that that table in there mentions third-party access twice. One of those should be recorded as the Cyber Incident Preparedness and Response Effectiveness Audit, but the opinion in that table is still correct. The high priority recommendations made in relation to these audits is shown in section 2.11, and it's pleasing to know that positive action has been taken to address all of these recommendations. Unfortunately, 2 audits have yet to be completed due to resource pressures, but I'm working with the Section 151 officer to progress these as soon as possible. 1 audit was cancelled during the year, and this was replaced by the trade waste audit. Section 2.12 to 2.17 summarises our counter-fraud and corruption work, with more detail provided in Appendix 2. We've investigated 1 whistleblowing complaint, and our report is pending on this, and work is also ongoing on one investigation. We've undertaken a number of data analytics exercises on duplicate invoices and matching purchase cards to invoices. 10 potential duplicate invoices have been identified, and these have been reviewed by the finance team to determine if they are genuine duplicates. In relation to the National Fraud Initiative, 1 housing benefit match has been identified, and work to recover this amount is ongoing. Moving on to the overall opinion, I'm pleased to report that based on the work completed during the year, a substantial assurance opinion can be given on the overall adequacy and effectiveness of the Council's governance, risk management and control framework. And then finally, our compliance against the global internal audit standards is shown from section 2.32. No standards were assessed as not being in place. An action plan has been developed to address the few areas assessed as partially in place, and that's shown in Appendix 3, none of which are considered significant enough to affect the effectiveness of the internal audit standards of service or the annual opinion being provided today. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Do we have any questions? Councillor Voy.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, I noted there was only limited assurance on third-party access under cyber, which rather concerned me, and just wonder what measures have been taken to mitigate against the risks there. Thank you.
So, thank you. Management have confirmed that those control weaknesses have now been addressed. That audit came to audit committee, but because of the nature of the security findings in there, it's not something I can really address unless it's part of a confidential part of the agenda, which we don't have today. But certainly from management's responses, from memory, those were addressed prior to the final report being issued as well.
And you as internal auditor were satisfied and have done some tests to ensure that that is the case?
No, we don't follow up immediately from those management responses. That's something that would take into account during the year and for the annual planning process. We've always got cyber in there, so it would be something that we can follow up during the year and test where needed.
Yeah, I would just ask that we note that for throughout the year. This is a vital area which so many organisations around, both in the UK and around the world, have suffered from, and it has cost large sums of money. And I'm very glad that it's been noted and the management have dealt with it. But I think this is something we need to address pretty much every meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Mark Holland.
Thank you, Chair. A previous iteration of this committee did receive quite a detailed report on cyber risk, and I wondered if Craig or perhaps anybody else in the room who remembers the content of that report, if it is still relevant and reasonably up to date, would it be worthwhile sharing confidentially any information that was not made public at the time, so that current members of the committee can have access to that? And only to agree with what Councillor Froy said about cyber risk. It does form part of our risk register on the next item on our agenda, but it may well be something that this committee wants to make additional forays into seeking reassurance on over the course of this municipal year and cycle.
I'm happy to share that confidentially, and then just to reiterate what Alex has already said, those recommendations were all actioned by our Service Director for IT between the draft and the final report being issued.
Thank you, Councillor Wilden.
Just an additional comment, really. I've been in many situations where something's been actioned, it's been noted, it's been actioned, something's been put in place to counter a particular risk, unless that's followed up with someone testing it, and it's an easy delegated point to do. Rather have it done once the new processes and procedures have been put in place, rather than wait to the next quarter when it could have been too late to put to actually test it and find out that if there were any wrinkles or problems. It's a much better housekeeping situation. So I think that testing should be done sooner rather than later, in my opinion.
Yes, it's not something that we'd routinely do. There is an element of trust that it would take from management to say if we've created a control weakness, or we found a control weakness and they're providing a response to say it's been implemented, there is that level of trust between everyone that that they have done what they said they would do. What would need to be done then is there would have to be a follow-up, which is further audit work to go and test that, and that then creates a bit of a pressure on the plan, because that means us spending time that would be spent elsewhere on the audit plan. If that's something that is felt that needs to be put in place for those specific weaknesses, that's something that might need to be approved by the audit committee, bearing in mind the plan has already been approved.
I'd just say that they never tested if they needed enough lifeboats on the Titanic. Just say.
Councillor Foy.
Just one further point, Chair. On page 141 of the pack, there's a reference to debt recovery weaknesses, which is being addressed, or it says it's being addressed at the moment. And I just wanted to have an update on that and assurance that debt recovery is being strengthened. Thank you.
Yes, that one is still in a kind of a draft reporting stage. We're working with Craig on that one. So it might be best if Craig can update. But those findings are still ongoing at the moment, aren't they?
So we have a debt recovery policy. It was approved 3 years ago. So during the last 3 years, our debt recovery, this is in terms of sundry debtors, not council tax or NNDR. They have their own procedures that are followed. So the work that's been undertaken on sundry debtors has increased tenfold over the last 3 years. But in terms of our policy, there are set procedures, as in deadlines between when a remand is issued, when a final remand is issued, when a court summons has been issued, and audit have found that those are not always kept to. So we're doing some work to strengthen that, but we've also made audit aware that sometimes we don't keep to those as a choice. So one example is a developer who owes us a significant amount of money. He has a development company set up that has no assets behind it whatsoever, and his answer to us threatening with court proceedings is that he'll just wind the company up and we'll end up with nothing. So our approach with them has had to be different, and I think he owed us about £500,000 and now he owes us about £70,000. So if we'd have followed our recovery policy to the letter, we'd have probably ended up with nothing. So whilst audit check that the procedures are followed, there's always got to be some deviation from them. But yeah, loads of work going on.
Thank you. So is the committee happy to receive the outturn report containing the annual interim audit opinion for the 25 and 26? And then number 2, note the substantial assurance opinion on the overall adequacy and effectiveness. Sorry about that. We'll move on to item 8 of the agenda. It's the Treasury Management Annual Report for 25-26, be presented by Deputy Section 151 Officer Stephen Heppel.
Thank you again, Chair. This report presents the Treasury Management Annual Report for 25-26, which reviews the Council's Treasury activity over the year in line with SITFA requirements. As members may be aware, the SITFA Code, which sets out how councils should manage Treasury activity, requires us to report at least twice a year on performance. And this is the year-end review ahead of its submission to full council. In simple terms, Treasury management is about how the council manages its cash, how we invest surplus funds, manage borrowing, and control financial risks while ensuring liquidity. There are three key points I would like to draw out. Firstly, the council remain compliant with all Treasury limits and prudential indicators throughout the year. Secondly, the council prioritised security of funds, with investments kept short-term and placed with highly secure counterparties, such as the Debt Management Account Deposit Facility. Thirdly, an average return of 3.71% was achieved, generating 231,000 of interest income over the year. The year was characterised by significant economic volatility, including global events and inflation uncertainty, which influenced interest rates and investment returns. At year-end, the council held 4.05 million in investments and 8 million of borrowing, reflecting cash flow and capital programme requirements. As always, the overriding priority has been the security of the council's funds, with robust controls, professional advice from all close, and ongoing monitoring in place. In summary, Treasury activity during 25-26 has been prudent, compliant, and aligned with the approved strategy. The committee is asked to note the report ahead of its submission to full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Do we have any questions? Councillor Foy.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chair. Just one question. I notice we have both cash and borrowings. And I'm sure the council has considered this, but whether for the future it's possible to look at some kind of facility with the bankers whereby you're able to offset one against the other, because usually you're paying more on interest than you're gaining, and therefore having an offset account tends to reduce, give you a better net result in terms of interest received against interest paid. As I say, you may well be doing this, and I apologise, but I don't know the exact situation, but I'd appreciate a comment on that.
I think firstly, you've mentioned bankers. Well, the advice from all close is that we keep as little as possible in our current account, in the general fund account. So we try to limit that to about £1 million, give or take, just to give us some liquidity on a day-to-day basis in case some shocks come in. In terms of this particular scenario where we've got to year end, the advice from our advisors and what we see on a year-to-year basis is that as you get closer and closer to the year end, the borrowing requirements of all councils shoot through the roof to cover everything off. So whilst we have a borrowing of 8 million and we then show an investments of 4.05 million, it would seem sensible, like you say, to have just the one in one ways, but in terms of our day-to-day cash flow, we have significant incomings at the beginning of the month, and then as we go through the month, significant outcomings. And it just a wave really throughout the year. In terms of anything whereby sort of like a net pot, for want of a better word, it's not something we've not considered, been approached by our advisors about, but it's something we can certainly ask them about, I think. Yeah.
Any more questions? So is the committee happy to approve the annual governance statement for 25-26?
We're on the Treasury
Sorry,
Management
read the wrong
report,
box.
sorry. Councillor.
We're happy to receive the Treasury Management Annual Report for 25-26, ahead of it being reported to full council on the 30th of September. That one's approved as well, brilliant. Just want to make sure we did the first one twice. Item 9 on the agenda is the Corporate Risk Management Report for Q4 of 25-26. It will be presented by the Section 151 Officer Craig Turner again.
Thank you, Chair. So in providing the risk report to this committee, I'm pleased to report that the final quarter for 25-26 shows that there are currently no risks that are more than 6 months overdue for a review up to the end of Q4. There have been no risk level increases. There have been no new risks added. And I would also draw your attention to the corporate risk register that has been provided for information as part of your report pack. And should any of the members of the committee require officers to provide more detail of any of the reported corporate risks to review and discuss at future meetings, we would ask that you highlight the individual risk in question. So that will give our monitoring officer and the officers underneath her the time to review the risk, come back to you with how it's been measured and mitigated. For your information, the Council's Risk Officer reviews and annually updates the Borough Council's risk management strategy. So that came to this committee in April. The purpose of that strategy is to demonstrate how the risk management policy is to be implemented through our commitment to risk management, to describe the objectives of risk management and provide a framework for embedding risk management further across the council with defined roles and responsibilities in a structured process. This will then ensure that opportunities are maximised and risks minimised. And finally, to enable the council to develop risk management further through its effective use in its management and decision-making processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Do we have any questions? Councillor Holland.
Very welcome that there are no overdue risks. That's not the case always at this committee. Sometimes it's reported to us that that's not the case, but it is now, and that's extremely welcome. In terms of the risks on the register, can I draw members' attention to the one that covers cyber risk? Because, for example, the narrative on this one is that we still don't have an insurance policy in place, and the reasons are explained in the report, but I wonder if members had any particular concerns about that element of risk that we'd like to see investigated more, given what we discussed earlier in the meeting. We may not.
Can I suggest that as part of the next committee, we get a report from Sam, our Service Director, on cyber risk and insurance around it? Sam Clark.
That'd be an excellent idea.
Yeah, Sam's always happy to come along.
With your permission, Chair, so Sam did attend a scrutiny meeting in the last civic cycle. I don't think members asked him any questions at all following the acceptance of his report, but I'm sure that this committee, from a risk perspective, from an audit perspective, would be interested in hearing from him.
Excellent. Yep. I'd like to get sort of Sam across as well. That's brilliant. Do you have any more questions?
Sorry, just on that, I may, forgive me if I misunderstood. Do we not have insurance cover on cyber risk? So if we suffered a cyber attack that affected, for instance, council tax collection, business rates collection, we are not covered on that, or have I misunderstood?
I would have to find out more details for you, which can do ahead of the next meeting and bring a full report on it to the next meeting.
Councillor Holland.
There is on page 6 of the risk register itself a narrative that members may wish to read. I don't want to go to the extent of reading that myself, but under the action plan, there is a paragraph covering that off if members wanted to look at it.
President, are we as a committee happy to approve?
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do beg your pardon, but Councillor Holland has just pointed out to me that in that it's the question of the expense of these policies. I wonder if this is a case where cooperative action between councils across Staffordshire, Stoke would get a much better premium, because it's unlikely that somebody will be cyber attacked all at the same time, and therefore you might be able to get a much by taking a cooperative approach, even regionally or nationally, we might be able to get much better rates than taking it on board just as ourselves. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Councillor Wildham.
Councillor Lefroy, I think that's an excellent idea, because of the fact that insurance in these situations is often cost prohibitive. There are many big corporate blue chip companies that actually self-insure, which means they put a pot of money on one side each year. Rolls-Royce Aerospace, not the cars. Wish it was the cars. No, it is not cars. Rolls-Royce Aerospace, Marine Power are two big corporations that do the same. And they also take in another point that Councillor Froy made, or the officer made, in that they will put all their subsidiary companies together and block buy an insurance, which then works out a lot less expensive. It's still expensive, but a lot less expensive by doing that sort of thing. And they have an overall umbrella company called Sorcerer, which then sources everything in block, apart from just the insurance. And that works quite well, and it is economical. But I mean, these things have to be evaluated and looked at. But I know lots of because it's getting more difficult and life is getting more precipitous commercially, lots of big blue chip companies do still self-insure, because the only people who sort of make loads of money are the actual insurance companies. And every time somebody trips over a curb in Liverpool, my premiums go up. God, that was so cynical. Okay.
Thank you. Are we happy to approve? I'll run through the recommendations. Number one, note that there are currently no risks that are more than 6 months overdue for review up to the end of quarter 4, 25-26. Number two, note there's been no risk level increases. Number three, note there have been no new risks added. Number four, note that the corporate risk register profile. Number five, advise officers of any risk profiles that the committee would like to scrutinise in more detail at the next meeting. And number six, note that whilst the likelihood of the risk materialising may be mitigated, the likely impact may not change. Are you happy? Excellent. Item 10 of the agenda is the work programme for the municipal year. Would the committee like any other add-in for the work programme? Councillor Holland.
Nothing to add except on the last item, recommendation number 5, we've clearly indicated that we'd like to see a bit more on cyber risk, and to thank officers for the training that was offered prior to this meeting for new members, which I did happen to attend, even though I'm a slightly older new member. This has been something of a baptism of fire, hasn't it? It's been a very detailed and weighty first meeting of this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Foy.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the work programme, I wonder, and this, you may not agree with this, but I wonder if, given that we're expecting an announcement on local government reorganisation one way or the other, this actually, if there is reorganisation, this is a significant risk to this organisation. I'm not just talking about the fact this organisation will disappear. I'm talking about what happens before it disappears. And I wonder if there should be a piece of work. Obviously, we don't know until an announcement is made, and it may be scrapped. I hope it is. But if it isn't scrapped, I wonder if we should make provision for a piece of work about the consequences, financial consequences to this council and of LGR should it go ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Wildham.
Yeah, it's always wise to have a what if report. I totally agree with Councillor Lefroy on that point.
Councillor Saxon.
Yeah, just to reiterate my side of that as well, I do totally agree with that. You know, it's forward planning, especially with what is being proposed in certain ways. You know, this council has done a very good job of balancing the books over the years. And if we are merged, what, you know, how is that going to affect us? And that is something that we really do need to address and think about maybe policies to protect ourselves within that, in the LGR framework.
Craig, is that something we can add to the work order?
Yes, I'm just looking through the internal audit plan because I'm sure we have an audit of LGR planned, and whether we can expand on the remit of that audit or maybe spend a bit more time on that audit and reduce on another audit area. But I can consider that and liaise with yourself, Councillor Tift, ahead of the next meeting, if that's all right.
Yeah, that'd be great, yeah.
Okay. Can I just say a quick word as well? Just relating to the baptism of fire. I think that this is probably the busiest agenda you'll see during your time on the Audit and Standards Committee. Thank you for taking the time to come to the training, including Councillor Holland, who's been there and done that, I suppose, already. And thank you very much for all the questions. I know if we rewound a few years ago on Audit and Standards Committee, we would have probably been home and dry half an hour ago, but the questioning and clarity that you're requesting is really appreciated. I know you might think, oh, we're giving him a bit of a hard time here, but that's what I'm here for, to give you some assurance around what we're doing. And I welcome the questions, so thank you very much for them.
Excellent, thank you. Are we happy that the work programme be noted with the additional LGR? Fantastic. Final item on the agenda is urgent business. I haven't been notified of any urgent business, so be happy there. Excellent. That will conclude the meeting for this evening, and thank you very much for attending.